It's not completely new phenomenon. New political parties appeared in the previous years in all Central European countries, including Slovakia. Just in each elections, approximately half of political parties running elections are either newly registered, or parties which didn't run in elections before. So it means that de facto they are new parties. But the question is what to do with new parties which became politically relevant, part of the party system and even of the government. What is their ideological profile, how their politicians are behaving in complicated situation. And I have to say that the role of one of such newly established parties, SIS, Freedom and Solidarity Party, was absolutely crucial for the collapse of the government of Eveta Radičeva, and it led to the early parliamentary elections and creation of new political parties. And really situation in party scene is very diverse. We have still even new political parties which emerged after these elections. At least one party was officially registered, is a so-called new majority of Daniel Lipšic, the former vice chairman of Christian Democratic Movement. We have 2-3 other projects which can be considered as a potential new political parties, but most importantly, we still have the absolutely alternative political formation in the parliament, this ordinary people group, who are rejecting the idea of party as an organization for aggregating the interest of voters, representing the interests and will of people. So they're against political parties as such. They're against their own transformation in political party, and they are still enjoying big support from the population. It's the second strongest formation after Smer. So the question is whether this alternative politics of this kind will be spreading and the political scene will be more and more fragmented, or in center-right part of political scene, party system, rather the trends to integrate these fragmented forces will prevail, and then we will see a certain kind of counterbalance between coherent left and coherent center-right.
Maybe even former Prime Minister Eveta Radičeva could say that justice has been done because the Freedom and Solidarity Party, the Liberal Party that led to the fall of a government, now is disintegrating.
Maybe I wouldn't consider recent development and SIS as a consequence of their position in crisis in the government before it collapsed, but somehow the character of this party predefined that this party in such trivial situations as a conflict within the party. It's normal for many parties, but specifically for this party, I think it can have a dramatic effect. They do not have developed structures, so the whole party is approximately 100 persons. And I think that even when they decided to vote de facto against the government, they didn't have this feedback from the mass membership. Because in case of other parties, if they are deciding about important steps on the central level, for example, decision to leave the government, they are usually considering the consequences to their people in the regions. Mostly it's a consequence of this kind of politics, which is now supported by the population, not overwhelming majority, but quite substantial segments of the population, that small party, small organization, just few people with some ideas about alternatives in politics, can attract attention and support from bigger part of the population. The expectations are very high. But then this party is not accustomed to work in traditional manner, because still this politics, it's something very traditional.
Wasn't also an issue of the leader, because many people complain that Richard Sulik, the leader of this party, is very not stubborn, but not really eager to compromise. While in politics you need to compromise a bit.
I think that, he presents himself as a strong leader, and he is really a strong leader on the level of ideas. He is a politician with very clear idea how economy, for example, has to be developed. He is libertarian economist. It's important to have clear idea and strong opinion about policies. But it's not enough. You have to gain support not only among the voters, but also within the party, and you have to really to be able to make compromises. Without compromises, politics is not possible. If we want to be moral authority, then we can be public intellectuals. We can present absolutely unrestricted opinion, not taking into consideration the consequences to level of support or situation in the party. And sometimes it works because moral authorities can express so-called right opinion regardless of the prevailing opinion in society and can really be right. But it's not the case of the politicians, because politicians want to have support for their powerful legitimacy. They have to gain voters and to have comfortable situation within the party. I think that it didn't happen now in SIS, and I think that quite a big portion of responsibility really lies on Richard Sulík as a chairman of the party. Otherwise, of course, it's quite well-profiled party ideologically. We didn't have so clearly formulated party program based on liberal ideas as SIS has.
Do you think that because in Slovakia's history there was this tradition of having a charismatic leader with a party, it was Vladimir Mečiar and Robert Fico and so on. Now it seems Mikuláš Dzurinda, yeah. Now it seems that Daniel Lipšic is trying to have a similar kind of technique with his party. But Lipšic used to have, when he was a minister, is very conservative and with some links to authoritarian personality.
Yeah, I think that there are areas in which Daniel Lipšic can be criticized for his positions. Basically, he is a politician which is working with the idea of law and order. I think that the proper combination of this agenda can be with the agenda of rule of law, respect for human rights, so law and order and rule of law. So if you are emphasizing just law and order, then inevitably, yes, even in this Roma issue, you are insisting more on this repressive agenda. It means punishment for the obvious wrongdoings, but it's not enough. If you want to be democratic, full-scale politician, you cannot be concentrated only on punishment agenda, but also creation of conditions for improvement. And I think that so far, program of this new majority party misses these points. But I think that according to opinion polls, Daniel Lipšic is now operating quite successfully, because in all opinion polls, support for his party is oscillating around 5%. It's not enough now to be, 100% sure that he will be in the parliament, but comparing with some older parties who are in the parliament, they are suffering from bigger problems in support from the population than Daniel Lipšic's party. But we will see.
Why we have alternative groups or movements or political parties which are born on the right, liberals, then conservatives, but we don't have them on the left?
The main difference between this left part of political spectrum and center-right part of political spectrum is that the main tendency in the left part is integration, creation of coherent political parties, then a charismatic leader who is really purging left part of the scene. Don't forget that Smer swallowed maybe 7 parties, smaller left parties, because they see that, this party has almost half of the decided voters who supported them.
We are 1 year before the elections for the European Parliament, which have never been very popular somehow in Slovakia. Do you think that these European Parliament elections could be a chance for alternative groups to make their voice heard, or even individuals, independent candidates?
Maybe. I think that the current problems in Eurozone, in Europe, and all these discussions about lack of political legitimacy, democratic legitimacy, I think that it can encourage some people to run in elections. The favorable situation for these people is that in low turnout, the probability that you will be elected with smaller support is higher. Analyzing the previous results, we have in the European Parliament representatives of these older established parties. So far, I do not see big space for alternative politicians, but we cannot exclude.
That was political analyst Grigory Mesešnikov talking about the rise and fall of new political